ready to begin. We'll call to order the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission for March 25th, 2024. At this time, I'm going to ask County Chairman. I did give you that order, I believe, Jeff Phillips, to give us our prayer and Pledge of Allegiance. So everyone please stand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our Father, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for the abundant life that you have promised us. God, we thank you for what's happening in our community as we're looking for the future and the development of our community. And may you give us the strength to make wise decisions as we look to the future of Rutherford County. Bless us as we make those decisions. God, thank you for those that are supporting what's going on in the county. We ask that you continue to give us wisdom. We thank you for our staff and their leadership as we go forward. We ask that you be with them in their decision-making process. We also ask that you be with our citizens, those that are less fortunate and have needs, special needs, and we ask that you meet those needs in their families and make them whole. Thank you once again for loving us. It's in Christ's name that we pray. Amen.
You may be seated. Thank you, Chairman Phillips, for doing that for us. We'll now have our roll call and determination of quorum. Madam Secretary.
Jim Averwater. Here. Jeff Phillips. Right. Mike Cush. Present. Lee Bogle. Here. Charlotte P. Here. Trey Gooch. David Jones. Here. Chip Pinion. Marvin Whitworth. Jim Thompson. Pettis Reed.
Present.
We have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. Approval of the minutes, and I believe these are from March 11, 2024. I ask our Vice Chairman to do those.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The March 11th minutes are found to be complete and accurate. Therefore, I make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve. Have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, they have been approved. Item 5, public comment period. Mr. DeMosi, do we have anybody who's called in?
No, sir.
We have not had anyone to request a public comment period, so we'll move on to item 6. Items withdrawn or deferred?
None, sir.
We haven't had any items withdrawn or deferred. Moving into our new business in item 7. A, submitted for preliminary plan approval, Dunaway Downs, 24-1001, 124 lots, 115 residential on 197.7 acres, zoned RL, located along Dunaway's Chapel Road, Dunaway Investment, LLC. Applicant, Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. As you stated, the applicant is proposing to construct a new subdivision on this property located off of Dunaway's Chapel Road. All lots are going to exceed 1 acre in size. The property is zoned residential, low density. You see 2 access points to this subdivision. You've got one on Dunaway's Chapel Road, and then there's an existing connection also, I'm sorry, a new connection proposed to the existing Greenway Village subdivision along Bedrock Drive. They're also showing a stub out along the end of Oakmere Lane. As you see, that's in the far upper, I guess that'd be the northwest part of the site that Sheila just brought up on the property, or on the big screens there for you. We did have some concerns regarding the length of that street, speaking of Oakmere Lane specifically, just because of how long it is from its beginning to its terminus there at the property line. But you see what they've done kind of in the middle there is they put a roundabout in for a turnaround area, plus that would help also with traffic calming, the sense that we didn't want that just to be a long straightaway for someone to really pick up some speed, so that should help solve that issue. So we were comfortable with that. The traffic study did identify some improvements to Dunaway's Chapel Road as well as East Jefferson Pike that are also a part of this project. They're also providing a 4-foot shoulder along the project side of Dunaway's Chapel Road. We did send several comments to the design engineer, Mr. Chris McGuire. He is here to answer any questions. Most of those comments have been addressed. The one outstanding comment really dealt more with a construction plan issue, minimum pad and sinkhole elevations and things. But with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments concerning this for preliminary plan approval?
Doug, what do the roads look like in that area, and what school zone is this?
As far as the schools, now I don't have that right here to pull up. Knowing the general area, it would either be Walter Hill or possibly Oakland, Las Casas for elementary schools. I don't have that right in my, just right on my fingertips. So again, the traffic study did identify some road improvements that the applicant is making part of the project.
Other comments?
Doug, I see the 124 lots, 115 of them are residential. The other ones are?
Typically like detention pond lots, open space, step lots. Those generally fall into one of those 3 categories.
And just to get back to the road improvements, what are they again?
They're looking to do 4-foot shoulders, make sure there's 4-foot shoulders along the project side. I believe they're also making some improvements to the intersection over at West Jefferson Pike and Dunaway's Chapel Road. I know that Mr. McGuire, he was responsible for doing this particular project. He might be able to go into a little bit more of the details with the road improvements if you've got questions for him.
Was turn lanes discussed at all?
I don't think that entered into discussion just a whole lot with that.
There are no more questions. We'll ask that the applicant come forward, or representative for the applicant. Good morning, sir.
$2115 Northwest Broad Street. It's a pretty unique development. I've been hearing from this commission pretty often that we want to see larger lots coming through. Well, here it is. As far as the turn lanes go, the question on the turn lane was on Dunaway Chapel Road. With this only being 115 lots with 2 accesses, it's going to be relatively low traffic at each intersection. We're talking about 50 lots if we divide it in half. So the traffic study did evaluate those needs, but did not see that they were warranted.
You're talking about right now, what about 50 years from now?
I would assume that whichever developer came and pushed it over typically is the one that pays for those improvements, which we're going ahead and making the improvements on Jefferson Pike. And it's going to be a turn lane addition. You can see it up in the top right, the color portion.
I'm not talking about future developments or developers. I'm talking about you. So are you looking for the way that area will continue to develop? And that's what we're talking about is turn lanes. You're not just talking about for today and what the traffic study says today, but for the future, what's going on in the future. Did you look at that?
Yes, they did do projections on growth in the area within the study. I can't say exactly what the percentage was that they projected. We hired Rich Phillips to do the study.
Perfect answer, thank you.
Other questions for the applicant? I believe that's all. Appreciate it.
Thank y'all very much.
Before you leave, I may have one more. The type of homes that you're expecting to build, have you got that hammered out?
No, sir. I'm not too sure what they're planning on building. The person who currently owns it is the one who built Madison Cove, which which is a pretty high-end residential development, but I would just be guessing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, further questions, comments, motion? Today, I only have to really look on one side except for Commissioner Cush over here. He's over here and he's lonesome. Commissioners?
Just one quick question. Doug, did staff have a recommendation?
I mean, this appears to meet our requirements, so, as presented, we would look at it as recommending approval.
Move to approve the preliminary plan
Motion.
with staff comments.
Motion to approve with staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, it has been approved. Moving now into item B, submitted for final plat approval, beginning with item 1. Boura Section 2 and the re-subdivision of Plot 1 of Prater Subdivision, 23-2077, 9 lots, 9 lots, 8 residential on 7.97 acres zoned RM located along Estlin Court. Chadwick General Contractors Incorporated are the applicants. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The preliminary plan for this development was approved by the Planning Commission back in August of 2023, which this final plat does appear to be consistent with that. These lots will actually all have access to Estlin Court. The reason this came back as a preliminary was because of that little stub out there, Boura Street. You'll recall when we looked at this originally several months back that we had some concerns about the remaining Dunaway property, about how this was going to play into that overall development, and they didn't have any real specific plans, but we weren't comfortable with the piecemeal approach that looked like had been going on with this development, so we asked for a stub out. So what you see that they have done is they have put that little stub out of Boura Street there, and then that will be connected at some point in the future when/if the rest of the Dunaway property ever continues to develop. We just wanted to make sure that we had that connection in place. So that kind of gives you an idea as to why this came back as a preliminary in the first place. Most of our comments have been addressed at this point. There are a couple of outstanding things, nothing that I would say rises to the level of needing any kind of a deferral. Just a couple things on the plat itself regarding the northing easting points, just so we can re-verify those. And also they'll have to abide by the fire code regulations as far as fire hydrant placement and those kind of things. So with that, like I said, for those minor comments, this plat does appear to be in good order, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to the staff comments.
A motion has been made to approve. Do I have a second? We have a second. Further comments or questions? If not, those in favor say aye. Those opposed? That has been approved. Moving into item 2, Rosewood Retreat, 24-2015, 9 lots, 8 residential on 12.08 acres, zoned RM, located along West Scum Road. Monarch Homes, LLC, is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The preliminary plan for this development was approved by the Commission back in September of 2022. Again, this is consistent with that approval. The reason we were looking at a preliminary plan for this development wasn't so much because of new road construction, it was because of the new detention pond lot there. I think it's lot 2. You can kind of see that in the back of the development, which serves the entire development. So as such, that required the preliminary plan. All of our comments have been addressed on this. This plat is in good order. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Motion to approve, Commissioner Cush. Second, Commissioner Abelwater. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? Rosewood Retreat has been approved. Moving to item 3, James F. Batey, Resubdivision, 24-2018, 4 lots on 7.13 acres, zoned RM, located along Dillon-Mankin Road. David and Connie King as the applicants, includes a waiver to the turnaround requirement of a dead-end street exceeds 150 feet in length. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The applicant's proposing to subdivide 3 existing lots to create a new lot, which is Lot 8. You can kind of see that there kind of in the middle of the page that Sheila has up on the screen. That lot will have access to Dilton-Mankin Road, but then there'll be a second lot, Lot 7, that's going to have access to Arthur Drive, which is an existing road. We did request, consistent with our regulations, that a dedicated turnaround, such as a cul-de-sac or hammerhead, be added to Lot 7 because of the length of that stub out of Arthur Drive exceeding 150 feet. Again, that's part of our subdivision requirements. The applicant does not wish to do that. Regardless of whatever happens here, the plat in and of itself is in good order. Most of our comments have been addressed. This really is one of the only outstanding items that we have. But with that, the applicant is present and would like to make his case as to why they don't want to put that turnaround area in. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, and again, the applicant is present.
Before the applicant comes forward, commissioners, do you have further questions before the for the staff? If not, we'll ask that the applicant comes forward.
Good morning. I'm David King. Let me tell you just a little bit about myself. I've been referred to as a developer when I spoke with Ms. Huffines and Mr. Hughes. I assure you I'm a property owner, not a developer. I was raised on a farm all my life, lived on about 10 of them. None of them belonged to us as a child, and loved farms, loved the barns and the lifestyle and so forth. But we never owned our own farm, and I don't now, but I had a chance to buy a lot out at Dilton-Mankin Road. What drew me to it, it was an auction. There was a large silo and a big barn and tractor shed and a little white farmhouse. And it's very appealing. It's a 150-foot wide lot, about 1,200 feet, though, in depth. But I was drawn to it, and I purchased it back in 2022. The good thing is, the lot, this long 150-foot wide, 1,200-foot wide lot, length lot, joined Arthur Drive, which is an adjacent subdivision. And that subdivision, the street, Arthur Drive, dead ends into my lot back there on that, Lot 1. Well, I came to the planning, submitted a request to subdivide that lot so that I could actually build a house on my lot, because there's already an existing house, the farmhouse. I didn't want to lose the farmhouse. The lot that I bought does not have the barn that I mentioned. It does not have the silo on it I mentioned, but that was all part of the ambiance of buying that lot. I was approved to subdivide the lot, and so that created Lot 7. The setbacks on Lot 7 took on the setbacks that was in the adjacent subdivision, which was a 40-foot setback for building and a 20-foot on the backside, which left me a narrow strip to build my house, which I still had planned to do. I was not given the requirement to build a cul-de-sac on Lot 7. It was approved, and it is currently Lot 7, and there is no requirement for a turnaround on Lot 7 as it is today. Lot 2 came up for sale. I wanted Lot 2. I bid on it at the auction, but I was not able to obtain it. Someone else purchased it. He tore down the barn, broke my heart. Talked about tearing down the silo, but he didn't. And when he put the place up, he put the place for sale. I guess interest rates drove him out of building his house on Lot 2. So he sold the Lot 2 to me. And I was excited to have it because it gave me an opportunity to preserve the farmhouse and the silo and the tractor shed and a little piece of what to me was a kind of part of my background, my history in living on a farm. And I wanted to preserve that. So Lot 8 does that. By creating Lot 8, I keep the farmhouse, I keep the silo, I keep the tractor shed, and I still can build my house on Lot 7, which is already pre-existing. Lots 1 and 2, are separate, and the purpose of that is I'll probably end up selling what's left of Lot 1 and 2 on the new, so that I can afford to do some things in the back, which is to build my home. What I intended to do was take the back part of Lot 2, sell the front part, keep the back part, add it over to my Lot 7. That would extend Lot 7 and make it a little bit larger and more tenable for building a house. Because as I said, with the 40-foot setback, I had a little narrow strip there to build a house on. But if I combine that with the back part of Lot 2, I can build a decent house, I can put it in the middle of the property, and I can put fences around it, and it'll look like my little farm. If I have to build but now, when I did that, I talked to Ms. Huffmeyer and Mr. Hughes, and they said that to do that, to combine Lot 2 with my Lot 7, the back part of that, I would have to put a turnaround in. Well, that would kill it. I can't come up with that kind of money to build a turnaround on my Lot 7. And they told me, well, no, we can't force you to do that because it's already existing. And if they tell me that I have to build a cul-de-sac, I have to abandon combining the lot. So I have this Lot 2 back there that I can't combine to my Lot 7, and I have to just stay within that little 90-foot strip to build on. And if I see this as a win-win or a lose-lose. As it currently is, there's no cul-de-sac there. And if I'm forced to build a cul-de-sac, then I have to abandon joining the back part of Lot 2 to Lot 7 to make it larger, which means I have to abandon that and just leave it as it is and just build on Lot 7 as it is, and there will be no cul-de-sac. But if they let me give an easement for that, and that's what I asked to do. I would give them an easement so that someone could build a cul-de-sac if needed, and I could combine Lot 2 with Lot 7, have a decent-sized lot for my home, and then if the county at some point decided they needed that cul-de-sac, they could build it. And it would be a win-win. The cul-de-sac could be built if they felt like it was important. I could have a decent house on a nice lot, and I could preserve, the lot. The point of Lot 8, which is not in question here, though, is I preserve more of the land the way I want it to be, which is open, feels like a farm, keeps the silo, keeps the little farmhouse, and keeps things, makes a nice place for me and my family and my grandsons to come out and play. So my request is make this a win-win, because a lose-lose would be you leave it as Lot 7, I don't have a cul-de-sac, I build my house on a little narrow lot, and you don't get the cul-de-sac, I don't get a bigger lot. Win-win is I get a bigger lot by combining Lot 2 with it. You get a cul-de-sac if you want it, because I either deed or give you an easement to put the cul-de-sac in whenever you feel like it's important. That would be a win-win. Thank you for listening to me. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. King, correct me if I'm wrong, but your intention is one home on Lot 7?
Yes, my personal home.
Other questions for the applicant? There are no questions. Applicant, you may sit down. Okay, commissioners?
Doug, let me ask a couple of questions. I know in the past we've required some type of turnaround as it relates to that length of road, but I'm also thinking that when we've required that, it's affected more than one lot. I can't remember where we've required one that only affected one lot. Is that
I don't, off the top of my head, recall any, but I will say that as far as if there were multiple, that has been the case. You are correct. Now, I will say that this is a very, decent-sized lot, about 3 acres or so. In the future, should this ever decide that the applicant decide that he wanted to put another house on here, now I don't know if he'd have a sole site to do it, but if this is granted today and he comes back and says, well, I think I can get another lot out of this, we're going to want to see, if it's denied, if the waiver is granted today, we're going to say we need to see any further redevelopment of this. We're going to want to see some kind of a turnaround there. And I think that's kind of what raised our eyebrows a little bit, is this subdivision's gone through 2 or 3 different re-subdivisions at this point. I know the applicant says he's not a developer, but it seems like every time, maybe not from his standpoint, but every time we see this, it's being broken up into more lots than what was originally proposed to begin with. I think that's kind of what raised our eyebrows on it. And like I said, with lot 7 being as large as it is, it's not out of the question to possibly see another one if they could find the septic soils to do it. So with that being said.
The applicant has stated that's where he wants to build his house, and that's the reason he wanted to subdivide it to get to that. Is it reasonable to assume that if he ever decided to sell that lot, that a cul-de-sac would be required? But if he doesn't sell that lot and builds his house on it, then we would not require a turnaround?
Well, depending on the outcome of this, like I said, if you grant the waiver and he builds his house and he sells it to somebody else and they just live in the house, I mean, it's just, business as usual, nothing changes. Now, either the applicant, if he builds a house and then decides he wants another lot, or if he sells the property or he wants to sell part of the property to somebody else for them to build a house, even if he's staying on his house, where his existing house is, I think we'd have some issues with that because they'd be putting another lot on that.
So we would be okay with that one lot, but if anybody in the future decided to subdivide it, then the cul-de-sac would come back into play.
Well, again, that's if you grant to approve the waiver. I mean, that's up to you. If you're okay with that and approve the waiver today, that's how we would look at this moving forward, is any other future development would require some sort of a turnaround.
Let me just ask one quick question, Nick, while you're here. I'm inclined to approve the waiver request basically because this guy wants to build his house on a large lot and not affect anyone else. From a legal perspective, would that be acceptable?
The subdivision regulations specify that waivers can be granted. It says if the Planning Commission finds that compliance with certain subdivision regulations will increase the difficulty of development of a particular property without significant benefit, in other words, result in practical difficulties, a waiver of these regulations may be granted, provided that such waiver shall not have the effect of nullifying the intent and purpose of these regulations.
So we would be on pretty firm ground?
If you all think in voting for this that there's difficulty in the development as proposed of this property, and that by holding the applicant to the strictures of the subdivision regulations really wouldn't cause a significant benefit, then I think you have a basis to go ahead and grant the waiver.
With all that being said, my motion is to approve the request for waiver with all of the comments that have been discussed.
Have a motion,
I'll second.
and we have a second.
And this would be for the waiver and plat approval, correct? Not just the waiver, but the waiver and plat approval.
Say that again one more time,
As
Doug.
this wouldn't, well, the way you worded your motion, you said for the waiver, but you mean the waiver with the entire plat is what you're talking about. Thank you. Just wanted to be
Plat
clear.
approval.
That's exactly what I said. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Further discussion?
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask, how are we going to, say, 5-10 years down the road from now know we had this discussion, and how would a future buyer know that that would be a requirement? to further subdivide this lot will require that? I mean,
It
that
might-
notation on the plat
It might be a good idea to have a note on the plat to that effect. Just, I have no plans of going anywhere anytime soon, but, sometimes that's not up to me. So it'd be good to have something on the plat to reflect that. Just that way somebody buys it, they could say, oh, okay, well, they can't say they didn't know. So I'd be fine with something like that.
Do we need to add an amendment to that motion, or can we just,
I think
staff require
Yeah, I think
that?
staff will make sure that gets on. And I mean, the representative, of course, the applicant's here, and representative from SEC is also here, so they're here and everything. We're saying loud and clear on that.
Could I just add that to my motion to make sure? I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, and your second will cover that too. Appreciate that, Commissioner, because I was thinking the same thing. How do we know down the road how that's going to be there? So we'll make sure that's there too. Further comments? Not, Madam Secretary, call the roll, since we've made such a change with this.
Mike Kush,
Yes.
sorry, I didn't know it was off. David Jones. I'm sorry, all thrown off. Jim Thompson and Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries, and we'll move on with that and the waiver. Okay, I believe we have another one that is going to be placed in, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. DeMont.
Yes, sir, thank you. If we could have a suspension of the rules, this is for a final plat. It was being reviewed as a minor plat without a waiver. So we thought we were going to be able to handle it administratively, but kind of mid-cycle, it turned out that we found out that the fire hydrant could not be supported at that location, so we went ahead and put it on this cycle. But yeah, it's not on the agenda, but we just want a motion to consider this.
Have a motion to suspend the rules, Commissioner Overwater. Have a second right here. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you. Yes, this is the Piedmont subdivision. This is 2 lots on approximately 5 acres. This is located at the intersection of John Bragg Highway, Pilot Knob Road. Gene and Paul Parker are the applicants. You can see what they're proposing to do. Lot 1 is existing. Lot 2 is the larger of the, actually 2. They're looking to split Lot 2 into 2 different lots, Lots 2 and Lot 3. There'll be an existing house staying on Lot 2, and Lot 3 will be for a new building site. The plat in and of itself is in good order. Like I said, if it hadn't been for the waiver request, we could have approved it administratively, but as it turns out, CUD cannot support a fire hydrant out in this area, and it's not within 1,000 feet of a fire hydrant currently. So they're just asking for plat approval subject to the fire hydrant waiver. Again, other than that, this plat's in good order. So we'd be happy to answer any questions, and the applicants are present.
Questions for staff? Other comments? Say the applicants are here?
Yes, sir.
Would you like to speak to the applicants? If so, we'll ask that the applicants come forward if they have any comments, or you'd like to ask them some questions. Yes, let you come forward. I know you probably wasn't expecting this, but good morning. Commissioners, do you have any questions for?
I have a question about access to this lot. Will it come off John Bragg Highway?
Is there an access off of John Bragg Highway? Yes.
Right.
Yes, there is.
There's a
Well,
driveway.
there is a driveway, yes.
I wish anyone coming in and out of that luck, as you know, that it's a very busy, fast-paced area.
It is.
Anything else, commissioners? All right. Thank you for coming up and answering that question. But
Thank you.
we're putting you through your exercise this morning, but thank you. All right, commissioners, it's open now for any further questions or a motion.
Staff have a recommendation, Doug.
Yes, sir. We'd recommend approval of this.
Move to approve with staff comment.
And to approve. Have a second, Commissioner Overwater. Further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? It has been approved. Moving now into Section C, submitted for site plan approval. FJB Lot 2 Reapproval, 243002, construction of an 18,000 square foot retail building on 3.97 acres zone commercial services located along Lebanon Pike. FJB Limited Partnership is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. This site plan was originally approved by the commission back in August of 2022. Approvals for site plans are only valid for 18 months. They have that long to get a building permit. One was never issued for this particular site, so the approval has lapsed. So really all they're asking for is a reapproval. Like you stated, Mr. Chairman, this is being proposed for a retail trade type uses. One of our comments was that, if something else became of this, such as restaurant and everything, we'd have to verify parking requirements and whatnot, but at this point it looks like it's just for retail trade. It looks like 3 different suites. You can see A, B, and C on there. With that, most of our comments have been addressed. This will have to go through a pre-construction meeting and everything prior to any permits being issued, so any little tweaks that need to be made to the plan will catch before then. The applicant's representative, Mr. Enoch Gerald with Huddleston Steel, is present if you have questions, but this plan appears to be in good order.
Commissioners, any questions, comments?
Motion to approve with staff comments.
Motion approved with staff comments. Second, Commissioner Cush. Other comments? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed? It has been approved. Item 2, 5803 Shelbyville Pike Subway, 243004. Construction of a 2,200 square foot restaurant on .97 acres, Zone Plan Unit Development, PUD, located on 5803 Shelbyville Pike. Rajesh Patel is the applicant. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. The zoning for this property was approved by the County Commission back in February of last year. Planning Commission members probably recall this moving through the process a year or so ago. This site plan does match what was shown in the approved pattern book. It was approved as a planned development. Access is shown off of Ellis Drive. You have a right and left access off of Ellis Drive, and also a right in, right out only onto Shelbyville Pike. Consistent with the pattern book, the applicant did perform a warrants analysis for the intersection there at Ellis and Shelbyville Pike, where there is a cut in the median there. As expected, it did not rise to the level of needing any kind of a traffic signal or anything like that. But most of our comments on this have been addressed. There's a couple of just outstanding items, one from the Building Codes Department, which of course we'll handle prior to building permits, and then obviously any work that they would do in the right-of-way of Shelbyville Pike, would require TDOT approval. But with that, again, the plan does appear to be in good order. The applicant's representative from SCC, Mr. Al-Zamed, is here. They can answer questions as well. So at that point, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Questions for staff? No questions for staff. I'd like for the applicant to come forward this time. Good morning.
Good morning, Gauss Ahmed, SEC, 815 Middle Tennessee Boulevard. I'm here to answer any questions or address any concerns.
Commissioners? Hey, what you caught them on a good day, it looks like.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Comments or motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Averwater, motion to approve. Have a second. Have a second. Commissioner Phillips. For the comments, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, it has been approved. Moving to item 8, staff reports and other business. Mr. DeMasi.
Yes, sir, thank you. You'll recall last month we had a work session after the regular meeting regarding plan developments and the issues we've been dealing with those. After much discussion, kind of the way we ended the meeting was that staff would come back with more specific recommendations regarding plan developments, and even some that could be more universally applied, if you will. Not just to plan developments, but just regular conventional developments in general. So we came up with a list of things. These are in really no specific order. We're not saying that you have to do all of these or any of these. If you have other ideas, we're glad to look at some others as well. We've got the list. You should have a copy of the list on your tables as well as on the screens behind me. But we'll just kind of just run through. Most of what we looked at, we were looking in like 3 or 4 different categories. We were talking about lot width and setbacks, the number of lots and lot sizes, and open space. Those were the primary categories that we were looking at. So one of the biggest issues that we see with plan development lots, especially smaller lots, has to deal with lot width, especially when dealing with the step system. So what we proposed was looking at this. If you look at a public right-of-way, we would break it out into developments that use a step system and those that don't. So if you're going to use a step system, your road frontage we would require, as opposed to what we typically see anywhere from, we've seen 50, 55 feet up to about 60, 65. We would say, okay, if you're going to be using a step system, your minimum road frontage is going to have to be 80 feet, for lots not along a cul-de-sac or a bulb out area like an elbow, and then 60 feet for those along a cul-de-sac or a bulb out. If there was a developer that wanted to propose a development that had less frontage than what is being proposed above, they would have to be accompanied by a scaled utility location layout showing all utility lines, easements, that would have to be approved by the easement holders, either the utilities or, if it's a drainage easement, the county as well, prior to application submittal. You'll recall that we were looking at the Southern Harmony development. When we considered that a month or so ago, they came in with a very detailed utility layout of how they were doing that, almost to the foot, probably even more so than that. So that's something on that line is kind of what we would expect to see if in that situation. But however, even with that situation, under no circumstances would we allow a lot road frontage of less than 65 feet or 55 along a cul-de-sac or a bulb out. If you're going to be accessing conventional septic systems or sanitary sewer, again, we still put a minimum on there, but it's not quite to the extent as if they're using a step system. So 65 feet for lots not along cul-de-sacs, or 55 feet if they are along a cul-de-sac. And of course, all the lots would have to conform with all other applicable zoning regulations. Another issue we looked at was setbacks. The front setback isn't generally as big of an issue, so what we said was looking at a minimum of 40 feet, which is our standard for the RM or the RL district. Rather than looking at 7.5-foot sides or 5/10-foot sides, we looked at minimum sides, just keeping it at 10 feet. However, to avoid any confusion, we clarified that would be measured from the gutter or eave overhang, not face of wall. Sometimes what we run into is, from wall to wall, it's fine, but when you put the eaves in there, they extend in, which they're allowed to, but they extend into the setback by a few feet, so the actual structures themselves are a little bit closer. Plan developments, that becomes a little more problematic, especially when it comes to fire rating and different things, and I know Tanya Bell could speak more to that. Rear setback, we just left at 20 feet. That rarely changes in any development that we look at. Our alternate side setback, we would keep the same, and that's on corner lots. Our minimum setback would just be 1.5 times the prescribed side setback. So again, if it's a 10-foot, they'd have to have on that on corner lots, that alternate side where they're not facing the building would have to be at least 15 feet. Now, something that we looked at, and this I think helps solve a couple of issues when we look at that next bullet point regarding front-loaded garages. I think this helps with the parking requirements in plan developments. For front-loaded garages, they have to be set back at least 20 feet from the front of the house. I've seen this in some other codes, and that's not going to apply for side-loaded or rear-loaded or even an alley-loaded product. But we would want to see, rather than what the popular term in planning goes a snout house, where the garage sticks out way past the house, but in this case, we wouldn't want to see it flush either. We would want to see it backed up 20 feet. So what that does is, first of all, it breaks up the facade, but at the same time, it's providing you with an additional couple of parking spaces is what it's doing. And then looking at driveway width, be at least 10 feet for a single-car garage and then 20 feet for a two-vehicle garage. That would allow for people to have enough room to park two cars side by side to be able to get out, maneuver around. You could look at possibly reducing that just a little bit. If you look at our normal parking regulations for parking stalls and things, like a 9x18 is a typical parking spot. So, I mean, you could fudge with that just a little bit. The number of lots and lot size, this is probably the one we struggled with the most, and how to address this. But rather than come up with a minimum lot size, we presented just several ideas that the Planning Commission could look at. And when it comes to the number of lots, something that we thought might be a good idea, and we see this a lot, and we talked about this during the work session we had last month, where we'll get developers that come in and say, well, you know, under the current zoning, we're allowed to get 200 lots, when in reality, once you start taking out easements, rights of way, undevelopable area, they're never going to get that many lots. So even when they're submitting the development, they're thinking, hey, you know, we're getting less lots than what we're approved or what we could approve to get today under the current zoning, but reality was they were never going to get that many lots to begin with. So what we were talking about amongst staff as an idea was applications for PUDs have to be accompanied by a concept plan that would show the number of lots that could be built using the current zoning. So while they're laying out the concept plan, they would take out unusable areas such as wetlands, steeper slopes, sinkholes or karst areas, designated floodways, things like that. And you, at that point, they take that out and say, okay, well, this is more realistic yield of what we could get. And then you could say, well, PUDs can't provide more lots than could have been built under the existing zoning based on that approved concept plan. So that's an idea as well. Something that I've seen in some other ordinances, perimeter lots along a planned development have to have the same minimum lot size as prescribed by the adjacent zoning district and the zoning ordinance. If they, let's say these lots abut a public right-of-way, then whatever that minimum lot size is for the zoning across the street, that has to be the minimum. So for example, if you're trying to develop a piece of property in the RL area and you want to do a planned development, the lots that border your development have to be at least 1 acre in size, and then you kind of can possibly increase the density or decrease the lot size as you go in. Another way to look at this may be also that if you're going to propose a minimum lot size, that has to be what you prescribe in the pattern book has to be the area within the building envelope. In other words, that's calculated outside of any easement setbacks and everything. And you remember those diagrams we provided at the last meeting where when you looked at some of these, okay, yeah, they've got, okay, the lot sizes may be 6,000, 7,000 square feet, but the building envelope was maybe half that, if that. So that would help with that. And this is something that I've seen in another code as well. For any utility and or drainage easements along property lines, if you've got a 10-foot, let's just say you've got a 10-foot drainage easement on your property, you would have to add an additional 5 feet to that required setback. So what we typically see in a lot of these subdivisions, especially on the rear setbacks, is you'll have a drainage easement on the back of the property. Let's say it's a 20-foot drainage easement, which is completely within your setback. So you weren't going to get anything there either. But what we're saying is, okay, add an additional 5 feet, so that guarantees them a little bit more usable yard outside of any easements or anything like that. And then the last one was open space. You know, we put some statements in there regarding adequate room for front yard landscaping or trees in all yards outside of any utility and or drainage easements. Another route may be to look at underground utilities being required in all planned developments. I mean, mostly that's going to be relating to things like electric, fiber, those kind of things. And our current, as we discussed, our current open space is 10%. That could be raised to either 15 or even 20%. It used to be 20% before we reduced it about 10 plus years ago, and then keep the half of the area being usable open space as defined by our zoning ordinance. So those are some specific recommendations that we came up with. Again, we're not saying you have to do any of these, all of these, but this at least gives you an idea of some of the things that we've been talking about, and we just kind of wanted to get some direction from the Planning Commission on this. Obviously, like I said, some of these things, especially when we look at lot width and things like that, I know I was talking with representatives from CUD who are here, that even in our conventional developments for step systems along cul-de-sacs, those can get kind of tight, because as of right now, along a cul-de-sac, you're allowed to have a 40-foot road frontage along a cul-de-sac. So there may be the ability to make some changes to the zoning just in general, which would widen that out a little bit and give them a little more room for connections and things. So not all of these have to be specifically for PUDs, but the vast majority of them are. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners, I know there's a lot in here and a lot to be looked at. The thing I'm seeing right here, I know we are short 3 commissioners for sure. They're not here today that had some input into this. But I'd like to hear what you think today and just would you like more time to sort of digest some of this and see what you've got or whatever?
Doug, the road frontage and the setbacks, could you kind of go over what they are right now compared to what they're listed at on here? And so we could, I think some of the guidelines that we were talking about were almost double the size for PUDs, and I'd just like to compare what we have now versus what's on this piece of paper.
Correct, yes, sir. Excuse me. As far as what the current minimum lot size is in the planned development, there really isn't any. Sorry, excuse me. So it's hard to double something when you really don't know what it is. So that's why we kind of came up with the recommendations that we did. Now, the same thing goes for setbacks as well. I think what we're presenting here are responses to things that we see as issues. You know, as far as the setbacks, like the side setbacks, rather than letting them be 7.5 or even 5 and 10, let's look at just keeping them 10 on each side, keep them uniform. The minimum front setback being 40, but also allowing for requiring the front-loaded garages to be an additional 20 feet setback, which would provide, again, more space for parking, and also, in my mind, you know, it helps break up the facade of the house a lot. So I think what we're seeing here is the ability for us to provide minimums that at least say, okay, if you're going to do this in a planned development, you can still, you know, kind of play with the regulations to some extent, but you can't go below these drop-dead minimums is what we're looking at. Now, a lot of these, when you look at them, they're going to have the impact of raising the lot size. I mean, because they're going to have to. You know, when you start talking about, of course, you know, requiring a larger front setback, larger side setbacks, you know, minimally, and then adding, you know, easements. If you're adding setbacks to easements and things, you're making the lot bigger. So I don't know if there's going to be a time where we're going to start seeing those kind of small lots like we've been dealing with, 6,000, 7,000 square foot lots. I don't think you would be able to do that, especially when you start adding in the road frontage and things. So the changes that we're proposing, in effect, are going to make the lots bigger. Now, as far as putting, like I said, a drop-dead minimum on there, we didn't do that just because it's hard to come up with what's that minimum going to be. But I think these recommendations would have that impact of doing that. Now, let me go a little further. To answer your question regarding road frontage, in our code currently, and this goes for any development, you have to have a minimum of 50 feet of road frontage. Okay, that's any lot, subdivision at all. If you're on a cul-de-sac, you can go down to 40 feet. Okay, now that's been the way since I've been here, quite frankly, so that never has changed. But with the issues that we're seeing with STEP, and with the step and the different easement connection, making sure everything fits, you know, maybe it's time to revisit that and say, rather than just say, okay, this is only going to apply to planned development, something like that, that really should apply regardless of the development. If you're going to have a step system, then yeah, if 40 feet is going to be too narrow, then let's widen it out a little bit. So those are things that we don't have to change the PUD for. We can just make a general change to the ordinance to allow.
Rear setback of 20 feet, isn't that what it is now?
It is, yeah. What you're looking at there, what we're proposing is the current setbacks in the RM or the RL, 40, 10, and 20. And most planned developments that I've looked at, I can only think of one, and I think it was Southern Harmony, where it was actually a little less than 20. Of course, that was on a private road. But every other subdivision we look at as a planned development, almost without fail, has got a 20-foot minimum rear setback.
So how would that make a bigger backyard than what we're seeing right now? The complaints that I've been hearing, and I think we've been hearing, is I can't pass a baseball with my son in the backyard. I don't have enough room. And this doesn't address that, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, from that part, from the rear setback part, no, I don't think that does. However, if you're looking at, larger front setbacks, just making the lot bigger in general, if you look at some of the other things we propose as far as, like under lot size, the minimum prescribed lot area has to be outside of any easements or setbacks or anything like that. Like if you say, we're going to have a minimum of 8,000 square foot lot, that's going to be your building envelope. That's the area within your building envelope. That doesn't mean that's just the area where you could build your house. It doesn't mean it's going to be entirely all house, but that's providing you more yard even outside of the setback. So again, I do think that if you take all of these together, I think they're going to have the effect of making the lots larger.
Doug, what is the current driveway width requirement
I don't think we really have one, do we?
for a single and a double?
The drive, I don't think there is for a single family, I don't think there really is a minimum driveway width.
So is 10 and 20 that you've proposed, is that a current, or do we
Yeah,
not
that's
have?
just, that was a recommendation that was made.
Okay, so what we have now is somewhat less than that.
Yeah, well, like I said, I don't think they're really, if you look at our regulations, I don't think it just really comes right out and says,
Okay.
your driveway has to be, for a single-family road, home has to be X amount of feet.
All right.
It just isn't in there.
No, there's nothing on that, but a lot of times when you guys look at the PUDs, you'll make them kind of draw it with the cars sitting in it so you can kind of see. So you guys have kind of been making that as you guys go along. Y'all have kind of looked at that width and what your expectations were. And to your comment about the backyards, I think a lot of our comments I've gotten complaints about is where the whole backyard is a drainage easement, so they have nowhere to have a backyard. The only thing that would really technically address that, other than what he was talking about, the setbacks, is we've added another comment in there about additional 5 foot on top of the drainage easement. So if you would have at least a little bit of area back there before it goes straight into a drainage easement from your setback. So you might want to look at that. Is 5 foot enough? Is it not enough? You're looking at it from your side yards. So a lot of our side yards, you had a setback here, and you had a 10-foot drainage easement on this side, and you had a 10-foot drainage easement on that side to make your 20, right? So if we have an additional 5 on this side, it really is going to help, basically only for HVAC systems, because we were having issues with those sticking into the drainage easements and steepening up the slopes that we need 3-to-1s. So that's like at a minimum, I really need that 5 feet to make things work. And then Tanya needs that 5 feet to make things work in the field when you've got side drainage easements. So that's kind of critical. I just wanted to throw that out there. That's been a big deal for us. If we can get, it doesn't really provide baseball room, but it provides room for us to get the drainage easements in and have a little bit of breathing room. Does that help at all?
It helps a lot. Thank you.
Okay.
I think the conversation that we had, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the conversations that we had and suggested, and staff was suggesting that we even have that conversation, was because of feedback that we'd got from the public over the last 10 to 12 years as it related to these PUDs and lot sizes. I just want to make sure that what we've come up with is addressing that, and we're also looking toward the future, and this would be in concert with our long-term comprehensive plan, the conversations that we're having there. That's the reason I think that we had that conversation before, is that we want to be looking for the next 20, 30, 40 years in the future. And hopefully, if this doesn't do that 10 years from now, we can also make adjustments 10 years from now, and as far as lot sizes and those kinds of things, right?
Well, yes, sir. I mean, we could make adjustments every month if we wanted to. I mean, this is, I don't know, do we really want to do that? But I mean, these are just changes to the zoning code. I mean, they just have to follow the same process as a rezoning. This isn't like a one-time thing. We don't get it right, well, then we're done for the next 10 years. If we implement some of these things and it turns out they're not working, or they're not working like we thought were going to work, we can come back and tweak them. We don't have to wait for any preordained amount of time to do that.
I was excited years ago when it came to PUDs, making better use of what land that we had. That excitement has really waned quite a bit over the last few years, and I also want to make sure that we're making good use of the land that we have, but also to make use of that land being usable for people who buy those lots and can sustain a family and a growth of a family for years to come. So it has nothing to do with anything other than, are we looking for what's in the best long-term interest of the people who are buying these lots in the future? And I trust the staff 100% as it relates to making some of those recommendations. I'm pretty sure that what we're looking at requires a public hearing, and then it would also have to, and if it passed, it would also have to go to the county commission for a second public hearing before it's adopted. I'm comfortable enough with these to make a recommendation to approve and forward for our next 6 o'clock meeting for a public hearing.
For all of these, or for some of them?
For all of this?
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to comment. First, apologize for missing our workshop meeting. Unfortunately, my health was in a certain area where you did not want me here, I assure you. I was highly contagious, I'm sure.
Commissioner, since I have a motion, could I see if I get a second, and I'll let you do that in comments?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'll second it.
Oh, you second it?
With
Okay, well, we'll
this
just
comment.
let you go right ahead then.
You know, several years ago, staff set us up, and I think there's still options available with the Greater Nashville Planning. Well, I don't remember the official acronym for that, but we went to Nashville, at least some of us did, and we attended a couple of all-day conferences, and we discussed some really interesting topics that pertain to planning as far as demographics, the aging population and their need to downsize and to easier maintenance, the younger population that's coming up, and what is it that they want. They don't want the big houses, the big lots, and that sort of thing to take care of. We talked about affordability and homelessness, providing services and easy access, walkability, and that sort of thing. It was very, very interesting. And how do you achieve that? And that's where this whole thing of PUDs came up. And I did watch the replay of that meeting, and I heard people saying, you know, we need to do away with these PUDs and go back to the RS 15,000 square foot lots and that sort of thing. One of the topics we talked about at that was maintaining farmland and how to reduce sprawl. And what essentially came out of it is we need higher density closer to town, and we need walkability. We need to get away from the land burn that we have by using the bigger lots. Try to be more efficient and look down the road at what the younger generations want. How much are we going to grow? And, you know, I got to thinking about it, and if most of us, many of us are at an age where if you had 2 children and your children had 2 children, you've just tripled the need for housing in this county. So don't think that you know, the growth is somebody else. We played a big part in the growth here. Now we have to be able to make sure that our grandchildren can afford a place to live. For as far as affordability, people that own their homes have 38 times the net worth of a renter. We need more homeowners in this county and less renters. I wholeheartly agree with discouraging the building of the rental units. That's just detrimental. They do not have an anchor here. They are not long-term buy-ins to this community. We need to encourage that sort of thing. I think our PUDs are important. We certainly don't need to throw them out. We just need to refine the way we've been doing it. That was our first shot to do PUDs. And I think we're getting closer to what we need. This is a big step forward. I like all of this. I think it's a good compromise to kind of discourage the rentals, but still maintain some of the density and the livability. I suspect if we do this again in 10 years, the market is going to say we need more density because of affordability and a lot of other issues. I don't want to mow the yard, all kinds of things. I don't want to maintain things. I want somebody else to do it. But so we'll probably be doing this again, unfortunately. I hope it's not soon, and we all probably hope that it's somebody else doing it. But I like it. I think you've done a good job with it. And you guys certainly understand those concepts that the greater Nashville area has been explaining to us. And I encourage anyone, if you get the opportunity to go to one of those, it's awesome. It's awesome. Yes, yes.
Okay. Like I said, I've now have a motion and a second, and some discussion here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, one recommended revision, Doug, under the section for setbacks on the front-loaded garage to kind of mirror what we did on the 10-foot side measured from the gutter eave overhang. Could we put face of wall? Maybe is that the most conservative measurement for that 20-foot? That way we don't lose 2 or 3 foot of that depth we're trying to gain there.
Can you kind of go from the beginning? I was sorry.
The front-loaded garage
right.
bullet. 20 feet from the front of the house and designate like we did the 10-foot.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Maybe a little more,
yeah.
the more conservative measurement to keep a full dimension there instead of losing 3 to 5 feet.
Okay.
Thank you.
What about the, and Sheila was just asking me about this, as far as the open space, we kind of gave up a couple options there, 15 or 20%. Do we want to go back up to what we used to be, or do we just want to look at back to 15 or go up to 15, kind of in the middle there? Sorry? Okay.
So didn't we make
the motion
other?
Is on this, though.
And
oh, I'm sorry.
We have a motion, though, that is on what you see.
Sorry.
We certainly can make that clarification, and I'd just like to hear what most of us would like to see as far as that open space. It was 20%, if I'm not mistaken, 10, 12 years ago.
When we first had it, it was 20%. That's correct.
Okay, and I'm not sure what the proper thing is, but since we're probably going to end up with bigger lots, 15%, I think at least 15%, and that would be my thought. Your thoughts would be really important as well, so 15%.
Doug, was there something else earlier that addressed the usability and that sort of the things that were determined as usable land?
Under the number of lots and the lot size, yeah, that's at the bottom of the first page. It starts there about looking at a concept plan, taking out things like wetlands, slopes greater than 25%. Like I said, we can. I mean, obviously, these were, when this comes for public here, we'll have it more detailed, but those were some of the things that we thought about. Step areas, FEMA-designated floodways, et cetera. Just, I think, is that what you're referring to?
Yes,
Jim?
so does that affect this 15 or 20% in either way, positively or negatively?
Well, I don't think so. In this situation, this is saying is, okay, if you're saying you're going to get X amount of lots, what were you going to be able to get on this if you took out all this other stuff? Now, we could add in there,
Gotcha.
Take out 15% for open. I mean, we could do that, so, yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure by reducing one or increasing one and changing the percentage later, it doesn't alter the percentage there. Just want to make sure that those are separate items.
Yes, sir.
Doug, I just had another thought. I didn't want to circle back on that same 20-foot
for the garage.
Setback for the garage,
yeah.
But the front wall or face of wall, are we assuming that's the house, the structure itself? I'm thinking of front porches. Somebody built a 10 or 15-foot deep front porch or something like that. I didn't want to be measured from that, and we lose the.
Yeah, I'll get with Director Tanya Bell.
However,
we'll come up with something
that's
for us to look at. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, further discussion? Anyway, I want to give a little discussion too, and you mentioned Greater Nashville. I used to be a member of Cumberland Region Tomorrow, and we did this for years and years and years too. But we also looked at how you could save land and how you could do some of that within the area around Nashville and the 10-county area in that direction too. And I think the term that we got into was planned unit development, and the idea was the idea of the fact of using the term planned. And I have seen lately, and I hate to use this, but I get looking at PUD, planned unit development, and the term plan is important. I started looking at some, and I started changing PUD to piled up developments, because we got to the point where we're not looking at how we planned it. We're just seeing how many we could get in that square. It started looking like we went to Cracker Barrel and started putting in the golf tees and how we could get them in there, rather than saying we planned it and what we put in there. I remember the first PUDs I saw when I come on here, and we were looking at things that we could place within those PUDs to make it attractive and what we could. And it seems to me lately we were seeing a lot of them, just how many we could get in there. I'll never forget when we got in this big argument about this unit that's going in front of Rockville School out there right now. And when I went before the Planning Commission over here at the city of Murfreesboro, and I had somebody from City Council said, well, we could put 6 houses on an acre if we want to. And all of a sudden, it just hit me right here, 6 houses on an acre out here. It just really boggled my mind in how we do this. And I think that is what we're trying to look at right here. How do we plan that? And I've always said I want to be a member of the Planning Commission, not the approving commission. And I think it's good that we have the members we have here, because I think that's what you are. You just don't, I've seen it today and what you tried to do and how we've done it. And I think that's what we're trying to accomplish right here and trying to do this. I have been to 2 land sales in the last week, and those pieces of property, I've seen people there talking about all the development that's going to go on these pieces of property. When I look at them, I said, there's no way. They're out here in this area that's left to us now. We've already gone down this corridor of the middle of Rutherford County where the good land really was, where the farmland was flat and green and good soils and what we had. Now we're out here where the sinkholes and the water and everything else is. And we got some people that are thinking we can still keep putting those types of what we're doing back here there. You can't. You can't. We've got to be more creative in what we're trying to do there. I heard people saying, well, it's all the farmers' fault because they're selling their farms. Well, you got to think about that a little deeper. It's not necessarily the old farmers that are selling those farms. It's the fact that they're passing away. I'm one of those old farmers. I'm sitting on an old farm myself. I'm an old farmer on an old farm. And one of the farms that I saw sell, a part of that farm was a part of our farm years ago, and they sold it just recently. Well, the old farmer, or the old guy that had owned that farm, had passed away, and it was the children who lived somewhere else who was selling that farm. They had no need for it anymore. And that's what we're having now. We're having families that have moved away, and they have inherited a lot of this property, and they are the ones that are selling it. So it's a difference in the feelings of the property and what they want to keep and what we're wanting to use for it. And here we are at the Planning Commission having to look at it and say, oh, we've got to look at the best use for it in the way we look at it. And I think by the way that we look at what we do with these right here and what we have comes before us like we done today and how we look at it. I'd like to say that our job is going to get a whole lot easier. I just don't think it is. I just don't think it is, because every municipality around us is having the same chore, and I call it a chore, because it's not going to be easy for them to take what they've got and make it work. And it's nothing new. When they decided where to put this courthouse right here, they were given the job of finding 60 acres and how you would build the city of Murfreesboro. They were given 60 acres and they divided it up in lots. and they sold the lots to pay for the first courthouse that was ever here, because they couldn't tax the people to pay for the courthouse. And that's what they did. So we've been dividing this land up here in Rutherford County all the way back to 1813 in Rutherford County. And here we are still. The only problem is the good Lord quit making any more. And it's left up to us to figure out how in the world we're going to use it. So we've all got an important job. So any more discussion on this instead of listening to the old man sitting up here in front of this microphone? If not, Madam Secretary, I'm going to ask you to call the roll for the vote.
Jim Averwater? Yes. Jeff Phillips? Yes. Mike Cush?
Yes.
Lee Bogle?
Yes.
Charlotte P.? Yes. David Jones?
Yes.
Pettis Reed?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Marcy?
I don't have anything further.
All right. We'll have our regular meetings next month. I have nothing else on the agenda. If there's nothing else, we are adjourned.